I'm so proud of you. Good job.
You have explained it as well as I, maybe not, but I think other people would pick up on it. But I'm going to try to do a good job at explaining it. So we'll see how that goes. Don't get too excited yet. There's a lot of time for things to go awry.
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to make a mark here. So here's your tree closest in the foreground is here. The bottom of your farthest away tree here is here. So we're dealing with this much land area from here to here. And the road is a clue as to what's actually happening in the ground around these trees. And according to the road, this is a flat, I mean, there's a turn in the road, but according to the road, this is a flat area here. There is no big hill. There is no dip. If there was a dip, the road would be like that. If there was a hill, the road would go like that. And then, so let's say that, all right, I'll draw this. Let's say that there's a big dip in this road. So here we have the road that you drew. And then basically what would happen is you'd have this piece would kind of end in an edge, and then like another part of the road would pick up over here, if you could see that. So basically I could like build in a hill here next to that tree, and then here's the road. Here's the hill that kind of attaches to that tree. And then say this thing drops off, and then the road, there's a dip, like say there's a big hill and you suddenly can't see the road because it's in the hill. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you see like a tiny piece of the road over here, you know, it's moving away from you, you know, so then there's that break in the road. So then if that was happening, I would look, and I'm sure that drawing does not look like much, but I'm just saying that if I was in this space and I saw this drawing like this, and I'm like, okay, so there's something going on in the road. There's a big dip, so this is a hill. So in which case, this side could be a hill too. And then all of these trees are on this plane, right? They're all on this plane that comes down and meets the road in this hill. And then this little area back here where the road gets really small, well, that could be a lot farther away. I don't know how deep the dip was in that road. It could have been, I mean, just a cliff, basically. It could have been a catastrophic change. And I'm just going to continue this line up here because these trees would be in this plane too if there was this hill. But if there's a big dip, then these tiny trees back here could make sense. They could make sense because I've given an indication that there's been a change in elevation, which means that even though we've only covered this much ground in the drawing, there's a topographical situation. That means this space.
Maybe it could be the Grand Canyon behind there.
It could be the Grand Canyon. Who am I to say? Like maybe this is a river and this is a catastrophic waterfall. Like, well, I don't know. So if you give some indication of that, then the tiny trees back here do make sense, or they could make sense rather. Okay. But the way you have it, you know, if I just kind of get rid of this, and first of all, even if there was that big dip in elevation, it would still be a little hard to explain why this tree and these trees, or even this tree and these trees, because you could make the case that this one is closer to us and therefore on a slightly different plane. Like you could definitely make that argument, and I'd be like, fair enough. But you know, I think you kind of have to make the case that this tree and these trees are on the same plane, basically. And the scale difference, even if this was like, first of all, if this was a sequoia forest and this was a sequoia, it could be this much taller than other trees around it, but it's too narrow. So it doesn't make sense as a tree being that tall. And this tree could be a baby tree. I don't know. It could be a very new tree. But I think the shape of it would be different in some way. I don't really know. But it just, the actual, I think maybe you'd see more of the trunk if it was a baby tree and less of the top. I don't know, but there's something with the scale of these two, if they are in fact next to each other, which is what is indicated in this drawing. The scale of this versus the scale of this doesn't make sense. It would make sense if this tree was like up to here.
Yeah.
You know, but then that changes all the other trees around it. Then this tree, if it's not a baby tree, and then maybe even if just one of them makes sense, then you could almost read the rest of them as being younger trees. The other thing that could happen is you have this tree next to this tree and they're at the same scale and they make sense. And then, you know, the same thing could be happening here with the topography, in that maybe these are on the same plane and the road is doing whatever the road is doing. And, you know, then there could be a dip over here that we don't know about, you know, like, and you just need a little indicator of shadow or light somewhere And then that could show that this tree is not on the same plane as this tree, is that these trees are further back in space because something happened in this landscape. You know, whatever it be, whatever canyon, chasm, whatever, you know, or maybe this is flat and this is quite raised. Like that can happen too. Like maybe this is the edge of something and this is just a flat plane behind it, you know, like it's some weird plateau. That could totally be happening. But, you know, so basically every way that you drew these trees basically could be explained. Like over here, like I think it would be pretty easy to make the case that these trees are farther behind the darker trees with no leaves on them, like deciduous trees, shall we say, so that the evergreens, I think you could just by looking at what you drew, you could make a case in your mind that these trees are much farther behind or relatively farther behind this tree. It's harder to make that case with what's going on over here. And then if you did want to really demonstrate that these trees are farther behind this enclave of dark trees, I mean, there are a couple of things you could do. I would probably connect the darknesses of these trees underneath, and then you get, like, by doing that, you could sort of create that topographical change just by having a hard edge here, and then by having these trees like have their own little space behind it that's separate, you know? So in some ways, what that would do, I think, a couple things could happen. It might look like these trees are actually rooted on the other side of this hill. So like we're not seeing the very bottom of these trees, basically. Like the trees would continue behind this hill. That could be what's happening. That's actually what I was thinking about over here also, if you wanted to build in a hill, and then you could just act like you're only showing the top of these trees and they actually go much farther down into this whatever crevasse this is. That could be happening. You know, you could do the same thing back here if this was, you know, something was a big drop off there. I don't think you really need to do that because I think these trees make a reasonable amount of sense if you just give them a little area that looks different than the flatness of this surface. So it's just a matter of giving the viewer enough information to understand what's happening in this space from here to here. And the way you drew it, this was just basically a flat field with or whatever it is, with the road just going around this bend. So you see there's a bend in the road, but that doesn't tell you a thing about whatever is happening in the land. If I saw that in any other context, I would just assume that the road is flat. It's curving, but the land itself is flat. The road is just taking a turn. So that's really the biggest thing. And it's, you know, when I look at the drawing, like so much of the action is from here to here that it's almost like sort of what I'm saying, like it's interesting enough trying to resolve that, either trying to resolve it in my mind or just accepting it the way you